Hello, fellow reloaders. Professor P here. I had a great interaction with some of my learners today, and one of my new learners, of course, had the fantastic start question, which is, which cartridge should I start with? I'm new to reloading. I haven't reloaded one before. What do I start with? My preference, whenever I can, is to start folks off with the 38 Special. Lots of reasons why. Old cartridge, very well understood cartridge, lots of data for it, and the firearms are typically reasonably priced. Very, very available, and frankly, factory ammunition is pricey for what it is. Now, if you don't shoot pistols and you're not into revolvers, and this isn't your preference, next on my list is typically the old Remington 223, could be 5.56 by 45. This is extremely common. Same thing, tons of load data for it, very well understood, been around for a really, really long time, and probably more importantly, very available. Firearms are very available, so you can compare to factory ammo. Both of these cartridges are great places to start. If you don't shoot revolvers but you want to start with a pistol, then I typically recommend the old 45 ACP. Same kind of story behind that. Been around for a long time, tons of load data for it. Firearms are readily available and reasonably priced. A little different than the 38 Special. Of course, the big difference is 38 has the rim down at the bottom. Doesn't head space off the mouth the way the 45 does. They little different, but overall both these cartridges are about the same complexity in terms of a starting point. Luckily, this wave of beginners, they all have 38s. So we're going to start with a 38 and we're going to do some workups. Now, my group had a couple of interesting questions. How to go about the workup, certainly one of them. So we're going to work this one up in a series. On top of that, we're going to answer one of their questions that was very common question, but one that was concerning just in how it was asked. This one here is a GFL case, and you can hunt down on the internet who GFL is. And if I look in here at my cases that I have clean to go, I have some Hornady cases, some Winchester cases, and over here on this little tray here, Nosler, Federal, CBC, that's Magtech. Who else do we have? Oh, Starline. So there's the GFL. That's probably where the GFL came from. RP, Remington. Lots of different cases, right? All my beginners managed to go out and buy some 38 Special cases to start loading, or they had piles, and every one of them went, and they all got different head stamps. And of course, the question was, can I mix all the head stamps? Is that going to matter? It's a really tough question to answer with anything other than, yes, it is going to matter. All of the components are not interchangeable. You cannot simply swap out powders. You cannot simply swap out cases, primers. The question of how much it matters for a cartridge is going to depend on that cartridge. For a low power cartridge, if we were shooting bottom of starting grains with one of these powders, and at that point we could probably exchange one component and not have a significant risk. So I could swap a Winchester primer for a CCI primer, probably wouldn't be a big deal, but we would start at the bottom and we would test that up. It is important if you change a component to redo the workup. But the great question was, well, on an old one like this, and everybody's kind of operating the same specs, how much does it really matter? Well, that's probably a pretty legitimate question. We're going to do a basic load up. We're going to take some Starline cases and do a basic load up. At the same time, we're going to take one of our middle level loads and we're going to load a bunch of our other cases with just, say, 6 rounds and see what happens and compare the speed data. So we'll go clock all those speeds and we'll see what happens and what kind of case produced what difference in the result. Now, other things I like about 38 Special, this happens to be Modern Reloading from Lee, 2nd edition, just happens to be the book I grabbed. I do want to point out here that there is a ton of data in these. If we look here, we've got all the way from 77 grain frangible ammunition all the way up to 170 grain jacketed bullet. And this cartridge has been around since 1902. The question, of course, is what should we load? Well, my recommendation for a starting load for 38 Special will be somewhere in that 140 to 158 grain level. So if you're having to choose or look for a projectile in that 148, which is very common for wad cutters down here, but look at all these choices and look at all the large range of powders you have to choose from. So we're going to pick one of these. We're going to do a workup on it, and then just for fun, we're going to take mid-level of that workup and we're going to shoot all of the different cases to see what kind of speed differences we get, knowing that those speed differences are a translation of different pressures based on different cases. The other thing that I like is the firearms that support running 38 Special are very, very common. What you have before you here is this one right here. This is a 1946 era Smith & Wesson 38 Special. This one is roughly a 1962 or 63 Smith & Wesson 38 Special. This one right here, this just came off the shelf very recently. Model 206 from Rock Island. This is probably the least expensive handgun I've ever purchased. And it's made one trip out to the range, so we're going to get it out to the range a little bit. For those people who are starting to reload, I would encourage you to not use antiques. I would consider these antiques. Don't do that. Reloading is an experimental process, and it's very important you understand that the safety for yourself and the safety for your equipment is in your hands and your responsibility. Don't put old equipment like this or equipment that's expensive or meaningful at risk by testing with it. That's what this one's going to be for. So we're going to test on this one. Now, that said, we are not doing precision reloading. So something to really think about is when we're reloading something like the 38 Special, even though we're going to play around with some different rounds in it, the purpose of that is to be able to fire across many different guns. As much as I will test in this newer, less expensive, less meaningful firearm to me, I do want to be able to shoot in all these others. This is very different than precision reloading, where you're typically tailoring a cartridge to a specific gun for a specific purpose. So we're not going to do that. We're going to load a general cartridge to shoot across all of these pistols. We are going to do all the testing, of course, here. That said, let's get ready and let's do a series here on reloading the ubiquitous 38 Special.